Hey, what's up guys? This is episode 8 of Just a Millennial. Today we're going to be talking about why buying a car is a bigger deal for millennials than any other generation ever before. This is Mikey Okendo.
I'm Mike Cherub.
And I guess that's
shocking. We're going to talk about how millennials are different. Cheers. Welcome to episode 8, guys. As we said, this is Mikey. I am Mike. We have had a long day. Started at about, I don't know, what time did you get up this morning?
Well, I got up at like 3:45 or so.
Yeah, it was about the same time my first alarm went off, and then I think I rolled over about 5 times. And then my wife finally said, either get up or I'm throwing your phone out the window.
Yeah.
So I got up.
Because we were going to Grant Cardone's offices down in Miami.
Shout out to Grant Cardone, Sherry, Katie, Robert, everybody we spoke to. It was awesome. We loved it down there. We enjoyed it. Maybe next time we can get you guys to come up to Tampa, hang out, whatever. So we've been going at it since 3:45 this morning. It's been a long day.
It's a good interview, though, Dave had with him.
Yeah,
you guys should watch it.
Definitely check it out. We've got some big things coming up from that front. But we're not here to talk about IPD or the big things coming down that pipeline. We are here to talk about, shockingly enough,
ourselves,
millennials, and how we're different.
Yes.
And you brought up a funny point. Everybody always complains that millennials are... Everybody complains about millennials, and it's probably the biggest gripe I hear is that we're so different. And you said, well, because of social media and all these other avenues, like we just have a platform.
Hear about it more.
But let me just get my rant of the week out of the way. Just because you have a soapbox does not mean you should stand on it and talk.
Yeah.
There are plenty of you people out there that have a soapbox that you stand on and constantly yell things out. You should take your soapbox and I don't know, do something else with it. Carry groceries for an older woman.
Be nice.
Do something else aside from it, because there was an article I read on Sunday. I won't get into the details, but funnily enough, he basically railed against the Christian music industry and telling everybody they should boycott it, and then proceeded to delete every comment on his blog for anybody that actually disagreed with him and only kept the ones that agreed with him. So if you're gonna, here's my point. If you're gonna stand on a soapbox, cool, take the criticism that's going to come with it. If you're going to stand on a soapbox and then carry your ball home because somebody made you mad, don't get up in the first place because you still look like a child to the rest of us. My rant's over. I'll let you go now.
But the good news is we're not here to do that. What we really want to do today is get back to the crux, the core of our show. When we first started this, we were telling you guys that we really wanted to talk about what makes millennials tick, what is at our core being, and we want to get back to that today. We've obviously talked a little bit about social media, social selling, some of the sales processes, and how to sell to millennials a little bit. But what we haven't really talked about is how all that works from the perspective of a millennial. We've touched on it on each of those things, but I think one of the things we want to get at is really back to the core of it today. One of the key things we want to talk about, as I'm sure you know, millennials outnumber boomers as the largest general population now as a generation, so that's good.
Hashtag boom.
Exactly. And one of the things that's crazy is, I know we've both heard this. We talk to people all the time who are in the car industry, and we've heard from a couple of people, not everybody, but we hear from people that the general conception that there's this weird misconceived notion that you shouldn't bother selling to some millennials because they don't have any money and their finances are so jacked up, man. They just are all over the place. They have student loan debt and they got no money, no income. So why bother? I mean, what are these guys going to do? They're not going to buy anything. But I think what our key point for you today is, and what we're going to help you understand is, we think buying a car is a bigger deal for millennials than for any other generation. It's a huge deal. It's really, really important. And not just because we're interested in driving and that, there's all those stats out there that lead to the fact that millennials are still wanting to buy a car. But the reason it's so important, the reason it's such a big deal is because it means more to us than any generation ever before, because of the fact that we grow up in some economic hard times. We are going into the job market in a time that's shortly after the recession, which is tough. The employment's fairly low. We're dealing with a lot of difficulties, and wages aren't very high for some people. All of these things are factoring into it, along with your student loan debt that's out there. The average college graduate in 2015 had more than 35 grand in debt, and yet they're pulling in on average about $33,000 a year. So is it tough? Sure. Do they have a lot of money? No. As CNN said, I mean, in 2014, the average net worth is about 9 grand. But I think the point of this is when they buy a car, when millennials are ready, it's such a big deal to them because it means so much. It's such a big purchase. And that's so difficult that they expect a lot.
Yeah. Let's put it this way. When all of you out there watching, whether you're watching this on Tuesday when we broadcast this or you're watching on demand, I want you to take a moment. Think about your first car you bought. Not your first car, because if a lot of you are like me, you were probably gifted your first car. Things were already taken care of. You may had to pay things here and there, pay insurance, whatever. But you didn't have to buy your first car. And I want you to think about how old you were when you bought your first car. You take a minute.
When you actually bought it, like you said.
Now, I want you, obviously, I feel like this is such going to be like a Dora the Explorer episode. Because I want you to like shout your answer at your computer screen, and everybody all around you is like, what are they saying?
It's like Blue's Clues.
Yeah.
I hated that show.
Who sees the clue?
It's like right there, dude. It's right there.
Seriously, just turn 15 degrees to your left. You will clearly see the clue.
Yes.
It is a blue paw print. How can you miss it? Your house is every other color except blue.
And the freaking dog's making that noise everywhere. He's like, meow, meow, meow. Like, you know where he is.
What was, like, okay, what kind of mutant technology was in Blue's Clues that dog could shapeshift to like atomic level and then Clifford size in the same episode? That is like beyond the X-Men. That is like somebody needs to look into that.
And dogs don't make that noise. Everyone has that thing as a kid where it's like cows go, mrr, dogs go roof. Like when Blue's
Funny story. If you can name this reference, if anybody that's watching this can name the reference, email us at jam@autotainmentnetwork.com. I took this from a movie, so if you can name it, I will send you a gift card to Starbucks.
Yeah.
Funny story. I believe it's dogs can only make a grand total of 10 different noises. Cats can make over 1,000.
Wow.
Fun fact of the day. If you can name that reference, and you probably can't. Because I know what kind of movies you're into.
No, I don't know that.
It's not a movie that you would watch. But if you can name that movie, email us. Let me know who you are. I will send you a gift card to Starbucks. Now, the average age, and I'm going based off an article I read 3 weeks ago because I don't have it right in front of me because I'm the kind of person that doesn't bookmark stuff ever.
But it's paraphrasing.
Yeah.
It's close enough.
I believe the average age millennials are making their first big purchase, car, home, anything along those lines, is actually 29 to 30 years old.
That or they're projected to.
Or they're projected to. I am like the 1% because I bought my car when I was 22.
Right, which is much younger than
it's 8 years younger than what they're predicting most millennials will. We live in a society now where, and I talked with Carrie Wise about this at Digital Dealer, we live in an age now where millennials have adopted the lease mentality for everything.
Yeah.
From when they buy their phones, AT&T, Verizon have all these plans now where you can pay a monthly fee to buy a brand new phone every single year versus paying a lump sum and having it for 2 years. Streaming services. When was the last time you bought an album by an artist?
I'm just not interested in it. It's not even about being able to afford it. It's just like, look, I don't need to own music. I just am fine with paying $10 a month for Spotify or whatever and just having access to it. The last time I bought an actual song or an album, actually, let's say an album, Lord, maybe 10 years ago or more.
Speaking of, let me get one more quick little rant out of the way. Because those of you like me watched the Grammys last week.
Oh, the music thing. Oh
my gosh.
Gary Vee said something about that?
Did he really?
Yeah. I don't know if you guys, if you don't watch Gary Vaynerchuk, as you know, we do. Super funny. He actually made a comment about the whole Grammys thing. He was like, look, we all saw the freaking old guy up there, and he was like whining about, nobody buys songs anymore, and the records are just the sales are so low. He's like, look, the market is the market, is what he said. And he's like, look, your song, your album is worth whatever the market says it's worth. Like, you can romanticize about it and feel like it should cost what it did in the 1950s, and like you should make a certain margin on it. But it was really funny. He went on this whole rant about how he's like, look, man, pro athletes back, several generations ago, you'd see baseball players and they would have to literally work summer jobs because they didn't make enough money playing baseball professionally to make a living. And he's like, look, I mean, it very well may be that there's a shifting and a pivoting right now where the music industry, with some of these artists who like don't have the hustle and they don't have the performance, are going to have to do that.
For somebody to get on national TV and cry because they're not making as much money anymore because of services like Rhapsody, Spotify, Apple Music for that matter, probably the largest music distributor in the entire world, who sells a streaming service. You're basically going on weeping in front of everybody, in front of all the people, of course, that are going to agree with you because there's money in their pockets that they're talking about. And I feel like you got off stage and doused your $100 bill salad with ranch dressing and ate it. Like, really, bro? Just shut up. Like, there's a reason streaming services have become so popular. You want to know why? The cost for me to pay for premium, the upgraded premium for that matter, on Spotify is $10 a month.
That's it.
It's $12 for one album. I have unlimited access to all kinds of music for $10 a month versus, if I'm lucky, 11 tracks for $12.
And you know what it is? It's not like the problem that we have with that is that these jokers are whining about change, and it does suck. Like, maybe these guys are going to have to get part-time jobs because they're not going to make as much money as they did before, and they're going to have to be like athletes in the past. But that's not what we're here to do. We're not whining about the fact that, because I don't know if you have that perception, please understand, we're not whining about the fact that, oh, millennials have it so tough, and our debt to income ratio is so crazy because of student loans, and debt's at an all-time high but income's at an all-time low. Like, we're not here to whine about that. The reason we're sharing these thoughts with you is because we're trying to get you into the mind of a millennial, into the buyer persona that you're trying to create for the millennial generation. And the simple fact of the matter is, you need to know these things to know how we think and how much this means to us.
Funnily enough, somebody always, there's always somebody railing against millennials in the automotive world that says, why should we change the industry for millennials? Perfect example is exactly what we were just talking about. The music industry on the national platform is trying to tell everybody else to make a stand because our generation has adopted a new principle, which, by the way, is exactly what the record labels did when they first made all their money. They were ahead of the curve. All the streaming services are ahead of the curve. But we have changed the marketplace for music. What else are we going to change the marketplace on? Back to buying a car.
We're not trying to change it. It's just this is just the way the world works. It's the way that it always works. It's freaking evolution. Like, it's not something that's new. That's kind of like my rant. It blows my mind when people approach this. Like, every time this happens in every generation, like, something changes, sales process changes, the process of buying changes, what consumers want changes, and every single time it's like the same cycle of like, oh man, how do we keep up with this? Oh man, why do we have to change? It was so much, just romanticizing about, oh, it was so much better than before. But like, look, you just have to move forward and deal with it. But we're trying to help with that process because we understand it's not easy and it's not always fun. I think one of the biggest things to understand is, like, there's a lot of older generations who went through this cycle of, based off of what they made at the time, their income, versus the cost of living and the cost of, buying things and goods and things like that, services. You were able to get more with what you had. It was easier for you to actually buy a car on your own, in the 50s or something, because, based off of the average income versus the cost of the car adjusted for inflation, it was just easier to do that. It was easier to buy a house. It's not like we're working, and this is, I think, something that's key to understand for us when you're relating to us and talking to us. It's not like we're working less hard. It's just that we're getting less for what we're doing compared to previous generations in terms of, as I said, the cost of living, the cost of goods versus your income, which is fine. Again, we're not whining about change. It's just we're putting it out there so you understand that this is what we're dealing with.
Yeah, that's I mean, you've hit it pretty much right on the head. I mean,
yeah, and the other thing is too that going back to what we mentioned earlier about the fact that there are some people out there who say, oh, why bother selling to millennials? They don't have any money, and even though they're the biggest population, like right now in this very moment, they're just not ready. They're not ready in this moment. But at the same time, I mean, you can do this. Google it yourself. You can read tons of stats on Gen X and the older generations who are in their middle ages and they're in their 40s and they're considered the successful businessmen and women. And I mean, not to get into too much about it, but just some overarching stats. I mean, Gen X is making about 5% more than the previous generation before them. 5%, not much.
That's not a lot.
But they have 60% more debt than the previous generation. So, I mean, sure, like we have more student loan debt than other generations, but the fact that we are just the most indebted in general is just not true. So, you got to consider these things when you're thinking about like that kid who's walking onto your lot who you assume he's got student loan debt more than likely. You can't get this guy bought. I mean, why do you think you can get a Gen X person bought anymore? Sure, they may have a higher income, but their debt's going to be way higher too.
Or better yet, not even the thought process of I can't sell this person a car. Oh, I have a young person. My limit's like $5,000 max. I mean, if somebody had that thought process when I walked on the lot and bought my car, they wouldn't have gotten the credit for selling me and making whatever spiff or bonus they would have made because for me personally, for me as a millennial, there's two things I hate. I hate being sold, period. That's me personally, I hate being sold because I know what the end game is. I know what you want. If I'm not convinced when I walk in to buy, there's nothing you can say to convince me. That means I've already made my mind up the other way. Yeah. The other thing is immediate judgments that people make for millennials when we walk up. If somebody had made that judgment about me, I would have had no issue laughing in their face, drove back on their lot, specifically found that person, and then asked them to selfie with me in front of my new car that I bought down the road from another dealership because they were dumb enough to make that judgment. We live in a society now, and this speaks more to the millennial culture, where we're so open to everybody. Whether it's your sexual orientation or your race or anything along those lines. It's almost like
we're the most diverse generation.
We're the most diverse, but we also, to quote a really dumb artist, I mean, there's blurred lines with us. We don't see the same. Yeah, I went there. Yes, I went there. I know I'd get you.
The idea of the way that some people sell is still a little old-fashioned in the sense that it's that very hard selling, in your face, kind of like, oh, I'm not going to let this guy leave the lot. Like I went up to when a long way back when Alexis was shopping for cars, she was looking all over. Went to a Nissan dealership, looked at a couple of things there, and this joker like walked up to us, said hi, real charismatic, real blah blah blah, kind of the kind of sales guy who doesn't want to let you get a word in because he thinks that if you get a word in, he's going to lose control of the conversation, and he doesn't want to ask questions. He's just talking, and then tried to shuffle us inside and make us sit down and do some paperwork and was just real aggressive. I mean, we just got up and left because at some point, the reason we don't like that is not just because the high pressure. It's not like we can't handle negotiations. It's not always enjoyable, but we can handle it. What really is frustrating about it is because money means so much to us, because we understand not only did we see growing up, maybe some of our parents had a hard time because we see that they were the generation taking out this 60% more debt possibly than previously before. Yeah. So not only did we see that difficulty and take it very seriously, but you couple that with the fact that some of us have student loan debt, some of us have, people are dealing with lower incomes than they have in the past. So the money that you're dealing with means more to us. So the idea that you're trying to just force this transaction that's such a big deal to us pisses us off, because we're like, dude, we're not buying a freaking 99-cent song off of iTunes. Like, stop trying to make this thing happen. And you clearly don't care about us because you don't even ask a question.
I think the funny question there in that story that you brought up is, are you qualifying your customer before you actually get to the question phase in your sales process?
And see, for me, I mean, that we ended up walking away, but ultimately that was a sale that they could have made because we were interested, but we didn't want to do it. And, it's sad to say, but it happens a lot of places. And, the prejudice, I think, pisses us off too when you immediately assume stuff about us, just because it's so dehumanizing and devaluing. Yeah, really. I mean, you just, and I think we've gotten to the point where, because we understand more about technology, because we grew up with it, and we are technology natives. We are digital natives. You probably heard that term before. I think the reason it pisses us off so much when that happens is because we know how easy it is to pre-qualify and pre-screen. Pre-screen's a better term for it, but we know how freaking easy it is for you to do that, whether you use a vendor to do that or do it yourself or just put some time into it. So this idea that you still have people at your dealership, and this may or may not be happening, but if you still have people at your dealership that are doing this sort of prejudiced approach to their buyers, which I get it, it's human nature. Everyone tries to categorize people based off of their looks and appearance and things like that. It's natural, but if you don't fight that tendency to the point where you allow it to not affect your actions anymore and you become aware of what you're doing and try to stop, it's frustrating because it's so freaking simple to just take a step back and not look at somebody and say, this guy's wearing shorts and flip-flops and he's got kind of messy hair, and I mean, he's pretty young. I don't even know if he may be like working part-time. I mean, I'm not going to give this guy time of day. And you see it sometimes. You walk on the lot and they look at you, they make eye contact. They may not necessarily come up to you, or if they do, they're just sort of like, it's almost like they want to come up to you and just say, are you a looker or are you a buyer?
Let me make 2 quick points. I'll make an example and a meme.
Yeah.
One was the meme when you said we were born into technology, and it reminds me of the Bane meme from Batman, spoiler alert, from the 3rd Batman movie when Bane and Batman are fighting and Batman knocks out all the lights.
Oh, yeah.
And Bane's like, you adopted the darkness. I was born in it.
Yes.
That's us. We were born into technology.
Right.
But I guess, let me ask, the best way to put it would be this. I work Monday through Friday. Most of my Sunday is gone because I'm playing at church. And God forbid if I'm actually working on Saturday. Do you understand what my attire on Saturday is? I wear a pair of joggers, a tank top, and flip-flops. And that's assuming it's semi-cold in the morning. If it's hot, I'm wearing shorts, a tank top, and flip-flops. Yeah. I'm probably wearing a beanie because I didn't do my hair. I'm probably wearing some sort of hat. I look like a bloody mess. It does not change the fact that if I'm walking somewhere to buy something, I have a genuine interest in buying something. I think one thing that you can take away from the millennials don't like their time wasted is if we're going somewhere with a purpose. I know you and I specifically don't just go to the movie shop up the road because we just have an hour to waste.
I don't even like to just go to the mall and walk around.
I go with a specific purpose.
I shop online, and then if I see something, I'm like, oh, I'll go get it, and then I just go get it, and then I leave.
Yeah, and I've actually gotten to the point now where there's certain stores that I shop at, I know my sizes. Yes. I know what I can order, and it's like, I'll do it from my app.
Right.
But I don't go anywhere without a purpose. I don't aimlessly wander anywhere. If I'm going to Walmart, I'm going to Walmart with a purpose. If we're coming to your dealership, we are coming to your dealership with a purpose. It's not because we're interested in a car or we have no idea what we're doing. If there's a millennial walking on your lot and really has not done their research, tell us, because we need to find out where their time travel machine is, because that makes no sense. All of us do the research.
I mean, it happens. It's few and far between, but for the most part, it is the fact that we have researched and we know what we're doing, at least to an extent. And, the reason you shouldn't judge is also very simple. I mean, the whole idea, the business that we deal with mailology and what we do at IPD, we deal with some subprime customers, and the cool thing about it is there was a point in history where subprime was equivalent to bad. This was the kind of person, you hear all these car guy terms like, oh, that's a roach or whatever, these kind of terms that they have to describe a low credit kind of person. They're basically not only saying that they're low credit, but there's this connotation that used to come along with it that somehow describes this person as a bad person in some way. They're just a menace to society. They just are freaking deadbeats. The reason they have a low credit score is because they don't pay any of their bills, and they make no money, and they're just irresponsible. And there was a point in history where maybe that was true, although probably a bit exaggerated at the time as well. But nowadays, really, the subprime kind of customer that you're dealing with, even if it's not a millennial, is someone you should. This is really the main reason you shouldn't prejudge, because you're going to lose deals.
Prejudice in a sales process will only lead to less sales than you would get just by questioning your customer versus qualifying them before you question them.
Yeah, it may not lower your CSI. You may not have your customers you do have may not be less happy, but you're just gonna miss deals. You'll never know it. You will literally never know it, but you're just missing deals.
I mean, when was the last time somebody actually told you at the dealership that you said something offended them? Most of the time, people will walk away and they'll tell all their friends about their experience and how you were prejudicial. Whether you said something that gave it away, whether you weren't and you said something that sounded that way. You know, I'm not saying walk on glass because everybody gets offended at something nowadays. Something I said last week, you know, I was offended by Mikey's Ray-Ban glasses, whatever. But in today's day and age, if you are, you know, making those judgments, actually perfect example, and we got to actually wrap up. Perfect example is on American Dad, there's an episode, and I believe it's in season 2, where Roger and Stan decide to swap lives. And Roger has to go get a job, ends up at a car dealership. Roger starts selling all these cars, like becoming the best salesman in the entire department because he's changing his appearance, his desk, his accent, and everything based on the buyers. That is not what you want to do.
Because that's fake. I mean,
it's so fake and it's so transparent.
It's like the old thing, like what do they call it? The used car salesman starter kit, where you go out, you finance a Rolex. You have to finance it because obviously you can't pay for it yet in cash because you haven't made the sales to actually have that sort of an income flow or that cash flow. And then you get you get a couple nice shirts, a couple nice ties, and you just throw that on to make yourself look successful. So then people think you're successful. So then you make more sales. But I mean, to me, like, you look more successful. That means you're making a lot of money. That means, you know, you might be high grossing people. I don't know what's going on, but I am a little bit turned off by that myself.
You're holding back a little too much on the trade.
Yeah.
I mean, all those things. But I think the second point that we really have to, that you have to understand is from millennials, the biggest thing is we always do things with a purpose when it comes to our time. That doesn't, when we walk on the dealership, we're not there just to kick tires and hang around because it's fun to go to a dealership. You know, when you pull a bunch of people, most people would prefer to go to the dentist than they would a dealership. I mean, that says a lot.
Ultimately, we're just trying to help you understand a little bit more about millennials, about who we are, what we do, and why we do what we do. And ultimately, if you get, and I'm sure you've heard some of these stats that we threw out today and some of these ideas about, you know, income and student loan debts and things like that. You've heard it all before, but we're trying to put it into context for you of who we are in context of your dealership, because context is everything. And what you need to understand about millennials is not just all the stats that you hear on TV and radio and that you read about in papers and magazines. What you need to do is take those stats and take what we're talking about and put it in the context of your sales process and your dealership and this purchase for a millennial, and understand that because of the socioeconomic situations that are surrounding our generation, you need to understand that this is the absolute biggest thing compared to any other generation before. This is one of the biggest purchases that millennials will make, and one of the biggest purchases that any generation will make, but specifically because of the things that we're facing and some of the resources we lack. Because of that very reason, this is one of the absolute most important things compared to any other generation ever before. So keep that in mind the next time you're selling to millennials. Keep in mind how important it is to them and how big of a deal it is. And really don't be flippant about it, because that's the kind of thing that will immediately turn us off and make us think you just don't care about our time or money.
Well, folks,
would be bad.
Hope you enjoyed it. I'm Mike Cherub.
And this is Mikey Okindo.
We're out. Stay tuned for my Monster Mike's Starbucks drink of the week. This week, Mikey's going to say it's diabetes in a cup, but he might not until I tell him the name of it. This is what's called a butterbeer frappuccino. I could not explain to you how it's made. If you search Starbucks on the App Store, on the Apple App Store, I have no idea about the Android, Windows, whatever. But second app down is a secret menu. Go into Starbucks, find the butterbeer frappuccino. I promise you, it is delicious. Or you could just do what I'm doing in 3 weeks and drive to Orlando and get butterbeer, at the Wizarding World of Harry Potter.
And I guess if you do have an Android, you could Google it, because that's probably your only alternative.
Pretty much.